Marcus Sterling stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse suite, gazing down at the city below like a king surveying his kingdom. At 42, he had built an empire that spanned real estate, technology, and luxury hospitality. His net worth exceeded $12 billion, and his name appeared regularly in the financial sections of newspapers worldwide. But wealth had not made Marcus generous, it had made him cruel. "Get these people out of my sight," Marcus barked at his security chief, gesturing toward the small group of protesters gathered outside his newest hotel development. They were local residents being displaced by his project, but Marcus saw them as nothing more than obstacles to progress. "I don't care what you have to do, just make them disappear." His assistant, a young man named David Chen, cleared his throat nervously. "Sir, perhaps we could offer them better relocation packages. Some of these families have lived there for generations." "Did I ask for your opinion?" Marcus cut him off, his voice dripping with contempt. "You're paid to follow orders, not to think. If you can't handle that, there are 1,000 other people who'd kill for your job." David's face flushed with humiliation, but he nodded silently. This was typical Marcus Sterling, a man who measured human worth by bank account balances and treated anyone beneath his tax bracket as disposable. The pattern repeated itself daily. Marcus would berate waiters for minor mistakes, refuse to tip service workers claiming they should work harder if they want more money, and openly mock the homeless people he passed on the street. Once, when his Rolls-Royce broke down in a poor neighborhood, he spent the entire wait time on his phone complaining loudly about these disgusting areas, while the mechanic who came to help him worked in the rain. "You people live like animals," Marcus had said to the mechanic, a middle-aged man named James Okonkwo who had oil stains on his work uniform. "No ambition, no drive, that's why you'll never amount to anything." James had said nothing, simply fixed the car with quiet dignity, and watched Marcus drive away without even a thank you, let alone payment for the emergency call-out. But Marcus Sterling's empire was built on sand, and he was too arrogant to notice the cracks forming beneath his feet. It started with small things. A key investor pulled out of a major deal after witnessing Marcus verbally abuse a hotel housekeeper. Then a viral video surfaced of Marcus pushing past an elderly woman carrying groceries, causing her to fall, and then stepping over her without helping while muttering about poor people getting in the way. The internet erupted in outrage. Marcus dismissed it all. "Any publicity is good publicity," he declared confidently. "These peasants will forget about it in a week." But they didn't forget. Boycotts began. His hotel saw massive cancellations. Corporate partners started severing ties, unwilling to be associated with someone so publicly callous. His board of directors, worried about shareholder value, began questioning his leadership. Then came the real blow. A massive fraud scheme within his company was uncovered, not perpetrated by Marcus himself, but by his chief financial officer, whom Marcus had hired primarily because he was willing to cut corners and not ask stupid questions about ethics. The CFO had been embezzling millions and cooking the books to hide the company's mounting debts. When authorities investigated, they found a web of regulatory violations, unpaid taxes, and shady deals that Marcus had either authorized or willfully ignored. "How could you not know about this?" the lead investigator asked during one of many interrogations. Marcus, for once in his life, had no arrogant comeback. The truth was, he'd been so busy treating people like dirt that he hadn't paid attention to his own business operations. He'd surrounded himself with yes-men and fired anyone who questioned his decisions, creating an environment where corruption could flourish unchecked. The lawsuits came in waves: criminal charges, civil suits from defrauded investors, claims from employees he'd mistreated, former business partners seeking damages. The legal fees alone were astronomical, but the judgments against him were catastrophic. His assets were frozen, then seized. His properties were auctioned off to pay debts and settlements. Within 2 years, Marcus Sterling was bankrupt. He lost everything: the penthouse, the cars, the private jet, the vacation homes. His so-called friends vanished overnight. His wife, who had married him for his money and lifestyle, filed for divorce and took what little remained. Marcus found himself living in a tiny, run-down apartment in the very neighborhood he had once mocked. At first, Marcus was certain this was temporary. He'd rebuild, he told himself. He was Marcus Sterling, but no one would hire him. His reputation was toxic. He couldn't get a loan, banks wouldn't touch him. He couldn't find investors, they remembered how he treated people. Desperate and running out of money, Marcus took the only job he could find, washing dishes at a small restaurant in the neighborhood. The pay was minimum wage and the work was exhausting. For the first time in his life, Marcus understood what it meant to struggle, to count every dollar, to choose between eating properly or paying rent. His co-workers kept their distance at first. They'd all seen the news, knew who he was. But slowly, as weeks turned into months, something began to change in Marcus. Humility, that foreign concept, started to seep into his bones. He learned the names of his co-workers, listened to their stories, understood their struggles. He realized that the peasants he dismissed were people with dreams, families, and dignity, people who worked harder than he ever had. One day, the restaurant's dishwasher broke down during dinner service. Marcus, drawing on vague memories of engineering courses from his university days, managed to jerry-rig a temporary fix that kept them running. The owner, Mrs. Chen, was impressed. "You're clever," she said. "Why are you washing dishes?" Marcus told her his story, holding nothing back. He expected judgment, but Mrs. Chen simply nodded. "Everyone deserves a second chance," she said, "but you have to earn it." She promoted him to assistant manager, and Marcus threw himself into the work. He started noticing inefficiencies, suggesting improvements. The restaurant's profits grew. Mrs. Chen gave him more responsibilities. Meanwhile, Marcus began volunteering at a local shelter on his days off. He met James Okonkwo there, the mechanic he'd insulted years before. Marcus almost didn't recognize him, but James recognized Marcus immediately. "I remember you," James said quietly. Marcus felt shame burn through him. "I'm sorry," he said, and he meant it. "I was awful to you. You helped me and I treated you like garbage." "I'm so sorry." James studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Apology accepted. Now are you going to help serve this food or just stand there?" They became friends. James, it turned out, was more than just a mechanic. He'd been an engineer in Nigeria before immigrating, and he'd been slowly building a small tech startup on the side while working odd jobs to survive. He was developing an app for connecting skilled tradespeople with customers who needed their services. "It's almost ready to launch," James explained one evening over cheap coffee, "but I need someone who understands business operations and scaling, someone I can trust." Marcus looked at him in surprise. "After everything I said to you." "You're not that person anymore," James said simply. "I can see that. The question is, do you want to help build something good?" Marcus did. He joined James as a partner, taking no salary, just equity. They worked 18-hour days, building the business from James's garage. Marcus used every legitimate skill he'd ever learned, but this time with a different purpose. He wasn't building an empire to tower over people, he was building something to help them. The app launched and took off. Within 6 months they had thousands of users. Within a year they secured venture capital funding. Within 3 years they had expanded internationally. The business model was simple but powerful: connect skilled workers directly with customers, giving workers better pay and customers better prices by cutting out exploitative middlemen. 10 years after losing everything, Marcus Sterling stood once again at the top of a billion-dollar company. But he was a different man entirely. The company employed thousands, paid fair wages, and provided full benefits. Marcus personally funded scholarship programs for underprivileged students and housing initiatives for displaced families. At the company's anniversary celebration, Marcus stood to give a speech. The room was full of employees, partners, and community members, many of whom had once been the poor people he'd dismissed. "I've been a billionaire twice in my life," Marcus began. "The first time I thought wealth gave me the right to look down on people. I measured my success by how much I had and how much others didn't. I was wrong. I was cruel. And I lost everything, not just my money but my humanity. The second time I learned that real wealth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in the lives you touch, the people you lift up, the dignity you give and receive. I'm grateful for my fall from grace because it taught me what grace actually means." He looked across the room and found James, who nodded in encouragement. "I can't undo the pain I caused. I can't give back the years I wasted being a terrible human being, but I can spend every day trying to be better. And I can say this with certainty: I am richer now, standing here with you, than I ever was in that penthouse looking down." The room erupted in applause. Later, as people mingled, David Chen, Marcus's former assistant, approached him. David was now a vice president at the company. "I never thought I'd work for you again," David said with a smile, "but I'm glad I do." Marcus smiled back. I never thought I'd deserve a second chance, but I'm grateful for it every single day. As he looked around the room, Marcus saw faces that reflected the journey he'd taken, from arrogance to humility, from wealth to poverty and back to wealth again, but most importantly, from cruelty to compassion. He'd learned the hardest way possible that how you treat people matters more than how much you have, and that true success is measured not by how high you climb alone, but by how many people you bring with you. The poor man had indeed become a billionaire, but more importantly, the billionaire had become a good man.